Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. Today I'm going to be doing the first part of my wrap-up for week 3 of Rocket Summer. Rocket Summer is an exciting reading event that was created by the great Michael K. Vaughan, in which we read classic science fiction for the month of July. This is science fiction from the 1800s through 1969. The third week of the month has been devoted to classic science fiction from the 1950s. There are also a number of co-hosts for this event, and I'll list them all in the notes below. I'm delighted to be a co-host this year as well. I've been developing a love for the work of Ray Bradbury recently, and for the 1950s, I decided to read his classic collection, The Martian Chronicles. This book also has a long history of being banned, and so for this part 1 of my wrap-up for the 1950s, I'm going to be talking about the Martian Chronicles also as a banned book for my participation in the Read 24 in 2024 Banned Book Challenge created by the delightful MJ at Reading This Life. This is my 19th banned book read for this challenge, so I've only got 5 to go. The Martian Chronicles, also known as the Silver Locusts in Great Britain, is considered a fix-up novel that was published in 1950. A fix-up novel is a novel that contains previously published short stories compiled in one volume. Bradbury wrote some additional very short stories and vignettes to serve as sort of bridges between the longer previously published stories. But all of the stories are connected and related in that they are about expeditions to Mars, the colonization of Mars, and a few of them take place actually on Earth, but they all somehow relate to going to Mars. The stories have been arranged in a sort of chronicle of the exploration of Mars. Originally, the stories were dated so that it would appear that they were coming from 1999 through 2026. But as the year 1999 actually approached, the novel was revised to reflect newer dates in the farther off future. So the newer edition of the book, in the newer edition of the book, the stories were dated 2030 through 2057. The stories are not all actually connected to one another, and they don't necessarily lead sequentially, from one to the next. There are new characters in each story, but it is more of a collection of short stories related insofar as they describe manned expeditions to Mars, life on Mars, which is totally habitable for humans, and life back on Earth after exploring Mars. First, I'm going to talk about the instances of this collection, The Martian Chronicles, being banned. The book was challenged and removed from the library at Florida's Haines City High School in 1982 for the use of God's name in vain. In 1987, the book was challenged as inappropriate, inappropriate supplemental material, reading material. It wasn't even assigned in a course. It was extra. It was supplemental reading at the high school in Newton, Conover, North Carolina, because of, it was challenged because of profanity. A similar charge of profanity led to the book being removed in 1993 in Gatlinburg Pittman High School in Tennessee. The last case that I could find on record occurred in 1998 in my home state of New Jersey, in a middle school in Edison, New Jersey. This challenge, which came from a parent who objected to the teaching of the story entitled Way Up in the Middle of the Air, this challenge was over the appearance of the N-word used by the villain in the story, an extremely racist character. In that instance, the book was removed from the middle school curriculum, but placed instead in the 10th grade curriculum. There was a 1997 edition of the novel issued, the one that changed the dates to make it further into the future, and that edition did omit this story altogether. I have an edition. My edition was issued in 2012 by Simon and Schuster. This edition includes all of the stories, including this one that was found objectionable. I'm not sure when it was restored. I couldn't find that. And I also could not find any recent evidence of the novel being banned since 1998. PEN America, who is listing all of the banned books, does not include it on their current list of frequently banned books. PEN America does include Ray Bradbury's novel Fahrenheit 451, and I had done a video on that novel and its history of being banned some months back. I'm going to talk about just a few of the stories in this collection that made an impression on me. First was the story entitled April 2000, The Third Expedition. This was something of a haunting story. Captain John Black and his crew, who make up this third expedition to Mars, arrive on the planet, but are surprised to see that it doesn't look like what they would expect Mars to look like. Rather, it looked just like their hometowns back on Earth. The crew members each begin finding their family members and other relatives, all of whom had died years earlier. But they all seem to be alive and well and thriving on this Mars that looks just like small town Earth. The once dead relatives describe Mars as a place where everyone gets a second chance at life. This seems too good to be true. Mars seems to the crew like a version of heaven. Captain Black himself is very happy to be reunited with his late parents and his brother Ed, who had also died. The crew disperses, abandoning their posts and going home with their relatives. This is where the story takes an absolutely dark and haunting turn. And we learn that things are often not as they appear, especially not on Mars. Another powerful story was June 2001, and the moon be still as bright. In this tale, the fourth expedition to Mars lands successfully, but most of the Martians, we find out, have died, and they've died of chickenpox acquired from humans in a previous expedition. The central conflict in this story is between the crew archaeologist, a man named Spender, and Captain Wilder and the crew. Spender explores the planet and feels deeply humbled by the wonders of the Martian civilization, which has been all but obliterated. Spender begins to completely identify with the Martians and their lost civilization. And he begins to kill members of the crew, members of his own expedition, whom he has found to be disrespectful of the Martian ruins. He tries to recruit one of the crew members, someone they call Cherokee, by trying to make clear the parallels between the Martians and the Cherokee Native Americans. But Cherokee refuses to go over to Spender's side. Spender's ideas are important to the work as a whole, pointing out how government and corporate interests have destroyed, in this case, have destroyed a civilization. But his methods are too extreme. Bradbury's own view is probably more closely aligned to Captain Wilder's, who believes in Spender's ideas, but not in his extremism. An extremely controversial story in the collection is June 2003, Way in the Middle of the Year. Way in the Middle of the Air, This is one of the only longer stories in the collection that actually takes place on Earth. The other being There Will Come Soft Rains, which is a frequently anthologized story. Way in the Middle of the Air is a story about a group of white men sitting on the porch of a hardware store in a small town on Earth. And they are talking about news that they've recently heard, that all of the African American people in their town have banded together in order to emigrate to Mars. Mr. Teese, who owns the hardware store, presents the central conflict in the story. He attempts to stop a black man from leaving for Mars by claiming that the man owes him $50. Teese's efforts are foiled when the crowd gathers to chip in to pay the man's debt so that he can leave on the expedition for Mars, free and clear of debt. The story goes on with Teese trying to stop various African Americans from leaving in a horrific effort to maintain the racist status quo in society. This story has grave limitations, and it only tells the story from the point of view of the white citizens of this town. The use of the N-word in the mouth of this most racist of characters is difficult to read today, and is no doubt why the story was removed from the edited 1997 edition of the book. But it is also a groundbreaking and brave story because it explicitly addresses a very real problem of racism in 1950s America, and it did so long before the civil rights movement had really gotten underway. There are 26 tales in total, some of them just short sketches or vignettes in between the longer, more developed narratives. In places, the stories celebrate humankind's sense of wonder and their drive to explore new frontiers. In other places, the stories provide more of a cautionary tale about humanity's tendency to overreach its influence, and yes, even to destroy what it comes in contact with. There certainly is language that the modern reader finds dated at times, but also some of the prose is actually beautiful, lyrical, poetic. It's easy for me to see why many think that Bradbury's best work was his short fiction, and some of the very best of that is in this little volume, The Martian Chronicles. I also read a number of short stories this week from the 1950s by some other truly great names in science fiction. Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, Philip K. Dick, Clifford D. Simak. But I'm going to talk about them in a second video of my 1950s Rocket Summer wrap-up, so that this one doesn't get to be too long. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.